What is the true measure of a man? Is it found in the strength of his body, the sharpness of his mind, or the courage he displays in the face of annihilation? The hero who stands on the precipice of chaos and holds the line. We carve their likeness in stone, write their names in history books, and imagine them as something more than human. Figures forged from steel and resolve, immune to the frailties that haunt the rest of us. But this is a profound and dangerous misunderstanding. The truth is that the warrior's greatest strength is not his immunity to pain or fear, but his intimacy with it. True courage is not the absence of terror. It is the decision to act in its suffocating presence. This is the story of a man who reached the absolute zenith of the warrior class, a United States Navy SEAL, a leader of men who willingly walked into the deadliest places on earth. It is the story of how he was shot, blown apart, and left for dead by his own comrades who saw no hope. But his death was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a journey so profound, so agonizing, and so ultimately triumphant that it would redefine the very meaning of resilience. This is the story of Jason Redman, the sign he nailed to a hospital door, and the long, bloody road back from the dead. To comprehend the crucible that would both forge and nearly destroy Jason Redman, we must return to the year 2007. The war in Iraq was not a distant headline. It was a raw, open wound on the global stage. America was deep into its fifth year of a conflict that had become a brutal, grinding insurgency. The initial shock and awe campaign was a distant memory, replaced by the grim reality of improvised explosive devices, sectarian slaughter, and a shadowy enemy that wore no uniform and obeyed no rules of war. The situation had become so dire that the United States implemented a final desperate gamble known as the Surge. Tens of thousands of additional troops were poured into the country, not to conquer the territory, but to provide security for the Iraqi people and to break the back of the insurgency, chief among them, the hyper-violent organization known as Al-Qaeda in Iraq, or AQI. The epicenter of this fight was the Al-Anbar province, a vast desert region west of Baghdad, and the heart of Anbar was the city of Fallujah. The name itself had become synonymous with the most intense urban combat American forces had seen since the Vietnam War. It was a labyrinth of booby-trapped houses, sniper-infested alleys, and a population caught between the American military and the brutal intimidation of the insurgents. It was into this maelstrom that America's elite special operations forces were thrown. The Navy SEALs, the Army's Delta Force, the Green Berets. They were the tip of the spear in the surge. Their mission was surgical, to conduct high-risk intelligence-driven raids almost every single night to capture or kill the high-value individuals, the emirs, bomb makers, and foreign fighter facilitators who comprised the leadership of AQI. This was a war fought in the dark. It was intimate, personal, and incredibly dangerous. The odds of survival on any given night were a matter of skill, luck, and the thinnest margins of error. This was the world that Lieutenant Jason Redman willingly entered, but his path to that specific hell was paved by a lifetime of preparation and a family legacy steeped in service. He was born in the small town of Shookin, Ohio, into a family where wearing the uniform was less a career choice and more a rite of passage. His grandfather was a decorated B-24 Liberator pilot in World War II, a man who survived 25 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe. His father served in the Army, his brother became a Marine, and his sister joined the Air Force. The Redman family bled red, white, and blue. From his earliest years, Jason felt the pull toward the world of the Guardians, the soldiers, the firefighters, the police. He knew he was meant to be one of them. At the age of 15, after a conversation with his father, the goal crystallized with absolute clarity. He would join the Navy and he would become a SEAL. It was the highest peak, the most demanding challenge, and for a young man from a family of warriors, anything less was unthinkable. He enlisted at 17, and after an initial stint as an intelligence specialist, he earned his shot at the legendary Basic Underwater Demolition DAR SEAL training, or BUD-S, in Coronado, California. To call BUD-S difficult is a profound understatement. It is a 6-month systematic process designed to strip a man down to his raw essence, to find his physical and mental breaking point, and then to push him far beyond it. With an average attrition rate of 75 to 80%, it is one of the most selective military training programs in the world. The curriculum is a litany of suffering, miles of running in soft sand, hours spent in the frigid Pacific Ocean until your body shakes uncontrollably from hypothermia, carrying massive waterlogged telephone poles known as logs for hours on end, an exercise designed to force teamwork under extreme duress. There is drown-proofing, where candidates have their hands and feet bound and are thrown into a deep pool, forced to learn to survive without panic. And all of this is overseen by a cadre of combat-hardened SEAL instructors who employ relentless psychological pressure, constantly telling you that you are not good enough, that you should quit, that you don't belong. The apex of this ordeal is Hell Week. For 5.5 days, candidates are in constant motion. They are perpetually wet, sandy, and cold. They are fed irregularly and are allowed in total perhaps 3 to 4 hours of sleep for the entire week. The sleep deprivation is so profound that it induces vivid hallucinations. Men have reported seeing their instructors melt, or the ocean turn into a field of flowers. Yet through this waking nightmare, they must continue to perform complex tasks, lead their boat crews, and function as a cohesive unit. Jason Redman not only survived this process, he thrived in it. He saw the brutal logic behind the madness. Hell Week wasn't about physical toughness. It was about revealing character. Could you function when you were exhausted, miserable, and in pain? Could you put the needs of the team before your own desperate need for relief? Could you lead when you had nothing left to give? Redman could. He graduated with BUD-S Class 202 and earned the right to wear the coveted SEAL trident. His early career, before the world changed on September 11, 2001, saw him deployed with SEAL Team 4 to Colombia and Peru. These were not combat deployments in the traditional sense, but dangerous counter-narcotics operations, hunting elusive drug lords in the jungles and rivers of South America. It was here he honed his skills in reconnaissance, surveillance, and small unit tactics. His performance was so exceptional that he was selected for the Seaman to Admiral program, a rare pathway for an enlisted man to earn a commission as an officer. After September 11th, the nature of his job transformed. The focus shifted from the jungles of South America to the deserts and mountains of the Middle East. As a newly commissioned lieutenant, he was deployed to Afghanistan, and then, in the summer of 2007, he was given command of a SEAL platoon and sent to the heart of the storm, Fallujah, Iraq. His team was tasked with hunting the senior leadership of Al-Qaeda. The operational tempo was brutal. Nearly every night they would board helicopters, fly into hostile territory, and assault compounds believed to be housing the enemy. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, and on a hot September night, just 1 week before they were scheduled to fly home, the mouse turned out to be a tiger lying in wait. The mission on September 13, 2007 began like dozens before it. Intelligence pointed to a high-value Al-Qaeda leader operating in a rural area of Anbar province. At 3 o'clock in the morning, under the starless Iraqi sky, Redman's team fast roped from helicopters and moved silently towards the target compound. The initial assault was a bust. The building was empty. It was a dry hole. As they were securing the site, however, their overwatch position spotted several figures, fleeing from a nearby building and disappearing into a thicket of dense vegetation and reeds bordering a small canal. The commander on the ground made a split-second decision. As Redman would later recount, the thinking was simple. Good guys don't run away at 3 o'clock in the morning. The order was given, pursue the squirters. Redman and his assault element moved forward, stepping out from the relative cover of the compound into an open field. They had no idea they were walking into a meticulously prepared kill zone. Al-Qaeda fighters, likely alerted to the SEALs' presence, had set up a textbook L-shaped ambush. Multiple machine gun positions, including at least one heavy PKM, were dug in and camouflaged, their fields of fire perfectly interlocking to cover the open ground the SEALs were now crossing. The moment Redman's team entered the center of that field, the world exploded. A hurricane of tracer fire erupted from the darkness, a terrifying web of green light that crisscrossed the field. The sheer volume of fire was overwhelming. The team's medic, positioned near the front, was hit immediately and went down. Another SEAL, a brave petty officer, rushed forward to render aid and was instantly struck by 3 rounds, falling grievously wounded beside his comrade. Redman, as the assault force commander, was caught in the heart of the kill zone. His training took over. He began shouting commands, directing his men to return fire and seek cover. But there was no cover. He was completely exposed. He felt a violent concussive impact, like a sledgehammer hitting his left arm. He looked down and saw that his elbow had been obliterated by 2 rounds from the PKM. The pain was blinding, a white-hot nova that consumed his senses. His first thought was a pragmatic, if profane, assessment. Well, my arm's just been shot off. The limb hung uselessly, the bone shattered, the nerves severed. Despite the catastrophic injury, he stayed in the fight. He knew that as the leader, his actions would set the tone for his men. If he panicked, they would panic. He tried to return fire with his rifle, but with his left arm gone, it was nearly impossible. He realized his only chance was to get to the sole piece of viable cover in the entire field, a large discarded tractor tire about 15 feet away. It was a desperate gamble. To get there, he would have to stand up and run through a blizzard of machine gun fire. He made his decision. He pushed himself to his feet. As he did, another bullet found its mark. This one, fired from a shooter positioned behind and to his right, entered his face just in front of his ear. The 7.62 millimeter round embarked on a devastating journey through his skull. It shattered his cheekbone, tore through his sinus cavity, blew out the orbital bone supporting his right eye, destroyed a large portion of his nose, and exited through the other side of his face, taking a chunk of his jaw with it. The impact was absolute. His world went black. He collapsed to the ground unconscious before he even hit the dirt. For his teammates, the sight was unambiguous. They had just watched their lieutenant take a round directly to the head and fall like a puppet with its strings cut. In the chaos and violence of that moment, the conclusion was inescapable. Jason Redman was dead. For the next 10 agonizing minutes, he lay motionless on the battlefield as the firefight raged around and quite literally over him. His team was in a catastrophic situation, pinned down with 3 men out of the fight, including their leader. They were in what the military calls a danger close situation, so near the enemy that calling for air support from the AC-130 gunship circling miles above was deemed too risky. The pilots, following their protocols, initially denied the request to fire, fearing they would kill the very men they were there to protect. On the ground, Jason Redman's body lay still, but inside his shattered skull, something flickered. He regained consciousness. His first sensation was the jarring vibration of the ground as bullets impacted near his body. He opened his eyes and saw the night sky streaked with the terrifying beauty of red and green tracers passing just inches above his face. He was drowning. His throat was filling with his own blood. He instinctively brought his good hand to his face and felt a void, a wet, gaping hole where his nose and cheek should have been. In that moment of horrifying clarity, he knew two things with absolute certainty. First, he was not dead. Second, he was about to be. He knew he was bleeding out, and he was too weak from blood loss to apply a tourniquet to his own shredded arm. He was going to die right there, in the dirt, under the Iraqi stars. On the radio, his team's leader, witnessing the unfolding disaster, made one last desperate call to the gunship. He screamed into the microphone, overriding protocol, insisting that his entire team would be annihilated if they didn't get fire support immediately. He formally accepted all responsibility for any friendly casualties. It was the ultimate gamble. The gunship commander relented. Seconds later, the sky tore open. The distinctive, terrifying thump, thump, thump of the AC-1 30's 40mm Bofors cannon echoed across the battlefield. A stream of high explosive rounds walked across the enemy positions, a line of devastating explosions that silenced the machine guns and broke the back of the ambush. In the sudden, ringing silence, the team leader, a man whose name Redman would later say deserves to be known for his heroism, did something extraordinary. He left his position of cover, ran across the now quiet kill zone, and grabbed his fallen lieutenant. He dragged Redman's broken body back to the relative safety of the tractor tire, and with practiced efficiency, cinched a tourniquet high on his mangled arm, finally staunching the massive blood flow. That act of courage in that moment saved Jason Redman's life. The battle for the field was over. The war for Jason's life, his face and his soul, was just beginning. The journey from the battlefield to Bethesda, Maryland, was a long, dark tunnel of pain, punctuated by flashes of consciousness. He was airlifted from Iraq to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, and then finally to the National Naval Medical Center, the premier facility for treating America's most grievously wounded warriors. He arrived as a collection of broken parts. He had received 8 units of blood, nearly a full body's worth. His jaw was wired shut, preventing him from speaking. A tracheotomy tube in his throat allowed him to breathe. A feeding tube in his stomach provided nourishment. His head was swollen to the size of a beach ball, his features almost unrecognizable. The initial prognosis was grim. The doctors, pragmatic and experienced in the brutal arithmetic of war, told his wife Erica that his career as a Navy SEAL was unequivocally over. They strongly recommended amputating his left arm, which was ravaged by infection and nerve damage. They laid out a roadmap of recovery that would involve dozens of surgeries over many years with no guarantee of success. But the most insidious assault came not from the physical pain or the dire medical reports, but from the quiet, well-intentioned whispers of pity. As he lay in his bed trapped in his own broken body, he began to hear it. Visitors, family friends, even some hospital staff would look upon his shattered form and speak in hushed, sorrowful tones. They spoke of him and other wounded warriors as tragic figures, as men whose lives were effectively over. They talked about how they were broken, how they would never be the same, how the American dream was now a cruel joke, a possibility forever stolen from them. For a man like Jason Redman, whose entire identity was forged in the fires of self-reliance, leadership, and indomitable will, these words were poison. They were more destructive than any bullet. He described hearing those words as his moment of finality, the point where the despair became so total that he felt like it truly was the end. He was being defined not by who he was, but by what had been done to him. He was being cast in the role of a victim. And in that dark place, a flicker of the old defiance, the same spirit that had carried him through Hell Week and kept him fighting in the kill zone, sparked to life. He realized he was at a fundamental crossroads, the most important one of his life. He could accept the narrative being written for him, the tragic, broken hero, or he could pick up the pen and write his own damn story. He made his choice. Unable to speak, he motioned furiously for Erica to bring him a pen and a piece of paper. He needed to make a statement. He needed to draw a line in the sand. On a bright orange piece of construction paper, a color that screamed for attention, he scrawled a message. It was a manifesto, a declaration of independence from the tyranny of pity. He had Erica tape it to the outside of his hospital room door where no one could enter without reading it first. The sign became the stuff of legend. It was a raw, unfiltered blast of pure, unadulterated warrior ethos. It read, "Attention to all who enter here. If you are coming into this room with sorrow or to feel sorry for my wounds, go elsewhere. The wounds I received I got in a job I love, doing it for people I love, supporting the freedom of a country I deeply love. I am incredibly tough and will make a full recovery. What is full? That is the absolute utmost. Physically, my body has the ability to recover. Then I will push that about 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. This room you are about to enter is a room of fun, optimism, and intense rapid regrowth. If you are not prepared for that, go elsewhere." He signed it simply, "The Management." That sign was more than just words on paper. It was an act of rebellion. It was Jason Redman taking back control of his own narrative. It was a message to his family, his friends, his doctors, and the entire world. But most of all, it was a message to himself. It was a public promise that he now had to live up to. The sign went viral in the pre-social media era of email forwards and blogs. It was a lightning bolt that resonated with millions. It captured the fierce pride and stubborn refusal to be broken that defines the American fighting spirit. The story reached the White House, and soon Jason and Erica Redman were invited to meet with President George W. Bush in the Oval Office. The sign itself was eventually preserved and is now displayed at the Wounded Warrior Ward at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, a permanent source of inspiration for all who follow in his footsteps. But making the promise was one thing, living it was another. The road to recovery was a brutal multi-year marathon of pain and disappointment. He would ultimately endure 37 separate surgeries. He fought off a life-threatening infection in his arm, refusing amputation and slowly, painfully regaining partial use of the limb. The reconstruction of his face was a monumental undertaking. Doctors used bone from his leg and skin, grafts from his thigh to rebuild his cheek and jaw. The effort to reconstruct his nose was particularly arduous. The first two attempts failed completely due to infection and tissue rejection, leaving him for a long period with what he bluntly described as a hole in his face. The physical pain was immense, but the psychological toll was in many ways even greater. The first time he was able to truly see his reflection, he was horrified. The man staring back at him was a stranger, a grotesque caricature with a mangled asymmetrical face and a tracheotomy scar that sliced across his throat. He mourned the loss of his old self, the handsome, confident leader he had been. He battled waves of depression and a volcanic anger that was difficult to control. This was the controversy of his story, not a public scandal, but the intensely private, ongoing war within himself. He had to confront the raw, uncomfortable truth that while he had survived the ambush, the man who had walked into that field was gone forever. He had to figure out who this new man, this scarred and broken man, was going to be. As he slowly, painstakingly pieced his body and his identity back together, Jason Redman discovered a new mission. It began with a simple, frustrating observation. When he would venture out in public, people would stare at his disfigured face. Their curiosity would often get the better of them, and they would ask, "What happened to you? Car accident? Motorcycle crash?" He was struck by the fact that almost no one ever asked if he had been wounded in combat. The idea that his scars were a result of serving his country seemed to be the last thing on their minds. This civilian-military divide, this lack of awareness about the true cost of the wars being fought in their name, fostered a deep bitterness in him. One day, out of pure frustration, he had a t-shirt printed. On the front, it read, "Stop staring. I got shot by a machine gun. It would have killed you." It was blunt, aggressive, and born of anger. But when he wore it, a funny thing happened. The awkward questions stopped. Instead, people would approach him, thank him for his service, and share a story about a father, a brother, or a son who had served. He had inadvertently created a bridge across the divide. He realized that countless other wounded veterans must be feeling the same way, proud of their service, but isolated by their scars, both visible and invisible. This realization was the genesis of Wounded Wear, the nonprofit organization he founded in 2009, while still in the midst of his own recovery. The mission was to provide clothing and support to wounded warriors and the families of the fallen. They designed and modified clothing to accommodate prosthetics and medical devices, but more importantly, they created apparel that gave warriors a sense of pride and identity, a way to own their story. But as he worked with more and more veterans, he came face to face with a far more tragic and urgent crisis: the epidemic of veteran suicide. He learned the horrifying statistic that, at the time, between 20 and 22 American veterans were taking their own lives every single day. He called it, with chilling accuracy, the war we are losing here at home. He understood that the root of this crisis was not just PTSD or physical pain. It was a profound loss of purpose. The military gives a warrior a clear mission, a tight-knit team, and a powerful sense of identity. When that is stripped away, many veterans find themselves adrift in a civilian world that doesn't understand them. Redman dedicated his life to fighting this new war. His work evolved from providing clothing to providing tools for life. He became an author, a motivational speaker, and a leadership coach. His best-selling memoir, The Trident, The Forging and Reforging of a Navy SEAL Leader, became a touchstone for veterans and civilians alike. He developed a practical framework for overcoming adversity, a system he calls the REACT method. It's the SEAL planning process adapted for the battles of everyday life. Recognize the reality of your situation. Don't live in denial. Evaluate your assets. What tools, skills, and support systems do you have? Assess your possible courses of action. What are your options? Choose one and commit to it. And finally, and most importantly, take action. Get off the X and start moving. His significance grew beyond just being an inspirational figure. He became a powerful advocate. He began to speak out about the unseen wounds of war, particularly traumatic brain injury, or TBI, caused by repeated exposure to explosive blasts. He understood that the shockwave from an IED causes a unique and devastating injury to the brain, different from the impact-based injuries seen in sports. To advance the science, he made the ultimate commitment. He pledged to donate his own brain for research upon his death, and he has tirelessly encouraged other veterans to do the same. It is an act of profound service, ensuring that his final mission will be to help protect the generations of warriors who will come after him. The story of Jason Redman is not a simple parable about a man who got knocked down and got back up. It is a complex, messy, and profoundly human story about what it means to be broken and then remade. The fires of combat forged him into a warrior, but it was the long, agonizing process of recovery that reforged him into a leader of a different kind. He went into that field in Iraq as a protector of America's freedom. He emerged from that hospital in Bethesda as a guardian of its forgotten heroes. His life is a testament to the idea that our deepest wounds, our most painful scars, do not have to be the end of our story. They can be the beginning of our purpose. They can be the source of our greatest strength. He still bears the visible marks of that September night. His face is a roadmap of his journey. But when you look at Jason Redman today, you don't see a victim. You see a man who faced the abyss and refused to blink. You see a husband, a father, a leader, and a teacher who embodies the ethos he wrote on that hospital door. He chose not to be defined by the ambush, but by his response to it. His journey holds a lesson for every single one of us, whether we have worn a uniform or not. We will all, at some point in our lives, find ourselves on our own X, pinned down by crisis, by loss, by failure, by despair. In those moments, we have a choice. We can stay on the X and be consumed, or we can find the courage to get up, get moving, and fight our way to a new beginning. Jason Redman's life is a powerful, living, breathing testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a thunderous reminder that even in our darkest hour, we have the power to choose victory over victimhood and to overcome. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.